Hello world, welcome to MBanks Unfiltered, where I talk about almost anything. This video will be me reading how I'm finna mess up the reading. How the U.S. government works. Executive, legislative, judicial branch, and how they all come together to govern a nation. By Syl Sobel, you know what I'm saying? Like a little children's book. So let's get to it. Illustrated by Pam Tansey. Shout out to both of y'all. Introduction. Why is there a government? To understand this question, first think about your school. Can you imagine what your school would be like if each class had rules that were different from the rules in other classes? Or if each class had its own schedule that was different from the schedules in other classes? What would happen if one class wanted to go to the library at 10 o'clock, but the other class wanted to use the library at the same time? Who would decide which class would use the library? And what if the school had no principal, no class parents, no people who worked in the office, and no building custodians? Who would be in charge? Who would help with field trips? Who would keep the building clean? It would be pretty confusing, wouldn't it? So here we go, you know what I'm saying? Just like in class, there y'all go, boom. Yeah, I know it's dark and shaded on one side, but shoot. Just listen then, just listen. Man, I do need to fix that lighting though, huh? Alright, that's cooler. Or at least feels a little better. Well, that's what the United States was like. That's what the United States was like many years ago. Each state had its own rules, but there were no rules for all the states. Each state had its own type of money, but people couldn't spend the money in all of the other states. Georgia had its money, but its money was different from the money in New York. Each state had its own leaders, but no one was the leader of all the people of the United States. The people of the United States decided that this wasn't working. They needed the same rules for everyone. They needed money that everyone could spend, and they needed soldiers and sailors to protect them if people from not so friendly countries wanted to fight. The people of the United States decided to form a government to do all these things. Okay, and then on this other side, each state has its own money, but there's that with a mofo red, you know what I'm saying? I'm not too good at reading out loud, but I heard some people like my voice, so there's that. The leaders of these different states got together to create this government. A government is kind of a business, or kind of like a business, but it's owned by the people to work for the people. There is a book of rules that tells our government how it's supposed to do its work. It's called the United States Constitution. The Constitution says that the government has 3 jobs. The first job is to make rules for the United States. These rules are called laws. The second job is to run the country. This means doing the things that the Constitution and the laws of the United States say that the government should do. The government must make sure that the people of the United States obey the laws too. Running the country also means commanding an army, navy, and air force, and it means working with other countries and meeting with their leaders. It also means doing the many jobs that people want the government to do, such as decide what kind of money everyone will use, take care of the land the government owns, helping to build highways and bridges, and helping to keep our food, water, and air clean and safe. The third job has several parts: settling arguments when people disagree, decide what a law means, and deciding whether people who are blamed for not obeying the law must be punished. So the Constitution divides the government into 3 parts called branches. Each branch has a different job to do. Part of the first page of the Constitution. So there's that, we the people, and then yeah, just all that I just read. There y'all go. You get that? You see that, children? You see that, class? The legislative branch. The first branch of the U.S. government is the legislative branch, which makes the laws. This branch is called Congress. The executive branch. The second branch of the government is the executive branch. The leader of this branch is the President of the United States. The President makes sure that the government performs its jobs according to the laws that Congress makes. The President also commands the Army, Navy, and Air Force and meets with leaders of other countries. The judicial branch. The third branch of the government is the judicial branch. It contains the courts. The courts decide how to punish people who do not obey the laws. Hey, slow down, mother. The courts also settle arguments that people cannot settle themselves. One confusing thing about the United States is that the whole country has a government, but each state has its own government. Each state has its own laws. Sometimes the state laws are very similar to the laws of the United States, but the U.S. government works for all the people of all the states. And the laws that the U.S. Congress makes apply to everyone in every state. The laws that each state makes only apply to people who are in that state. Let's look more closely at the people who work in each branch of the U.S. government. So boom, they go to branches, you know what I'm saying? Little razzle dazzle. All right, cool. Wait, hold on. All right. The Congress. The Congress makes the laws of the United States. The laws tell the people what they can do and what they cannot do. Some laws protect us from crimes, for example, by saying it's against the law for people to steal money from a bank. Other laws protect our health by telling people who produce food how to make that food clean and safe to eat. The Congress has two groups, the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives. The people of the United States who are 18 or older choose men and women to be in Congress. This is called voting or electing, a system of government in which people elect other people to make laws. A system of government in which people elect other people to make laws is called a democracy. The member of the House of Representatives do their jobs for 2 years. The senators do their jobs for 6 years. Then they have to be elected again if they want to continue their job. Every 2 years, the government holds an election for Congress. At that time, all of the members of the House of Representatives and 1/3 of the members of the state Senate are elected. So boom, there's Congress, and there's a two little, you know what I'm saying, U.S. Senate and U.S. House of Reps. All right, U.S. Capitol building. Let me see. The men and women in Congress meet with each other often. Sometimes all of the senators meet with each other. Sometimes all of the representatives meet with each other. And sometimes senators and representatives meet in smaller groups. These meetings and most of the work that the Congress does take place at the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C. Making laws. At their meetings, the members of Congress talk about new laws and changing old laws. The ideas for new laws and changes to old laws are called bills. Often, the members do not agree on what a bill should say. This is because they have different ideas about what government should do. When a majority of these senators and a majority of the representatives agree, they send the bill. So there we go, U.S. Capitol rioting mofos. Oh, January 6th, looking self. All right. Some of the most important laws that Congress make are about money. The government spends money to do its jobs. The government gets money it needs to protect people who live in the United States. The money that people pay the government is called taxes. Congress decides how much taxes government can collect from the people. These taxes pay for the work of the United States government. Congress also makes laws that say when people have to pay taxes to the government and how much to pay. For example, some taxes are collected from the money that people earn. A person who earns money for doing a job must give some of that money to the government in taxes. Usually, the more money people make, the more money they must give to the government in taxes. Taxes pay for government jobs. The U.S. government collects taxes so it can pay for things the country needs. For example, taxes help pay for highways and bridges. U.S. taxes pay for uniforms, ships, and airplanes for the Army, Navy, and Air Force. Some of the taxes help people who do not have much money to buy things like food, medicine, and pay for a place to live. Taxes also help to pay for doctors and scientists to discover new medicines. These medicines can keep people from getting sick and make them better when they get sick. And of course, taxes pay the people who work for the government. This includes the president and the members of Congress. State and local governments like counties and towns collect taxes. These taxes pay for libraries, schools, teachers, and police officers, for example. So boom, just a little picture of the little money cycle and stuff, you know what I'm saying? The Congress spends much of its time deciding how much money the U.S. government will spend. The Congress also decides how much it can collect in taxes. The men and women in Congress know that people need money to buy things for themselves and their families. People, therefore, do not want to pay too much in taxes. However, people do want the government to do many jobs, and paying for that work costs money. Deciding how much to spend and how much to collect may be the most important work of the Congress. Before citizens vote for the members of Congress, they consider many things. People often vote for the person whose ideas they agree with the most. Many of these ideas are about how much taxes the government should collect and how much money it should spend. So boom, got a little talker up there doing yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. The executive branch. The executive branch is responsible for spending the government's money the way the Congress says it should be spent. This branch must also make sure that the people of the United States follow the laws that Congress makes. The president is the leader of this branch of the government and is sometimes called the chief executive. Many people work in the executive branch of the United States government. Some people enforce the laws that Congress makes. To enforce means to make sure people obey the laws. For example, some members of the executive branch make sure that people pay their taxes. Other people inspect airplanes and factories and make sure they are safe according to the laws that Congress makes. Some executive branch workers inspect the food sold in stores to make sure it's safe to eat. They also inspect the water we drink and the air we breathe to make sure it is safe. Other people have the job of making sure that people obey the laws Congress has made about guns, explosives, and drugs. Some people do not obey certain laws, called criminal laws. When this happens, some executive branch workers are responsible for arresting them and putting them in jail. So then they got the little picture of Department of Treasury, Agriculture, Energy, Education, Transportation, Justice, and Health and Human Services. So boom, there's a little razzle dazzle right there. Boom, y'all got that class? I'm gonna quiz y'all after. No, I'm just playing. See, Old Faithful, Yellowstone, the Grand Canyon, Mount Rushmore. Let me see. Other people who work for the executive branch help the government do things for the people of the United States. Some help to build highways and bridges. Some take care of the national parks and memorials like Yellowstone Park and Mount Rushmore and help visitors learn how to enjoy them safely. Some executive branch workers help farmers learn how to produce food. Some doctors and scientists also work for the executive branch. They try to discover medicines or learn more about outer space. And some of the people who work for the executive branch help people in this country who do not have much money. They do this by helping them to get food or a place to live or helping them find jobs. How many minutes we at? Is that 13 minutes? Hold on. All right, cool. 13 minutes and 30 seconds so far. The president's jobs. The president has two other important jobs. One is to be in charge of all the soldiers, sailors, and flyers in the Army, Navy, and Air Force. Together, all these groups are called the military. Many people work in the military. Some of these people buy and take care of equipment like tanks and planes. Others take care of the military bases where soldiers, sailors, and flyers live and work. Some people in the military are doctors. Some are teachers. Some are cooks. The president can order the military to defend the United States at any time. Therefore, all of these people must be prepared to travel anywhere in the world if the president orders them to go. The president's other important job is to talk to the leaders of other countries. They find ways for our country and theirs to work together and get along. Sometimes our country helps other countries that need money, food, or equipment. Sometimes the United States helps countries that need military protection from other countries. The president sometimes meets directly with leaders of other countries. Other times, people who work for the president meet with people who work for the leaders of other countries. Some countries want to be friendly, some do not. Working with other countries and meeting with their leaders is important for the protection of the United States. Man, my bad. Did I show y'all the Yellowstone Memorial, whatever, Mount Rushmore stuff? Man, my bad. I forgot that page. Wait, did I show you the other one? Okay, yeah, y'all got that page. Man, my bad. I was reading this. I'm like, did I show them that last page? If we help other countries, they'll usually want to be our friends. But if a country threatens us, the president and the people who work for the president tell that country's leaders to stop. The president has the military ready to protect us. All right, so there's somebody taking flight. You know what I'm saying? The president can also help to make laws. For example, each year the president gives Congress a plan for how the government should spend its money. The Congress examines the plan and decides how much of it to make into law and how much of it to change. The president may also have ideas for new laws. The laws may be tax laws, laws about safety, and other ways the government can help the people of this country. The president asks Congress to agree to these ideas so they become laws. Usually Congress agrees with some of the president's ideas, but not all of them. Like the members of Congress, the president is elected. Every 4 years, the citizens of the United States choose who they want to be president. These people must be 18 or older to vote. The first president of the United States was George Washington. Another famous president was Abraham Lincoln. Do you know who the president is now? The capital, or Capitol and Capitol. The U.S. and the president's family live in Washington, D.C. in a building called the White House. The White House is not too far from the U.S. Capitol. It's like Capitol with an O and then Capitol with an L, so forgive me. Where Congress works. The U.S. Capitol, where Congress works. Many of the people who work in the U.S. government work in buildings in and near Washington, D.C. Because the leaders of the government are in Washington, D.C., it is called the capital of the United States. If you go to Washington, D.C., you will see lots of buildings where people in the U.S. government work. So, there's a little map right there. You know what I'm saying? Let me see what the White House. Okay, so White House right there, and then just everything else, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. All right, the courts. The courts of the United States are called the judicial branch. This is the third branch of the U.S. government. There are also state and local courts in addition to the U.S. courts. Courts are where people go when they have disagreements about the law. Hold on. All right, cool. Back in action. For example, sometimes people disagree with the government about what a law means. A person may think a tax law or a safety law means one thing, but the government says that law means something else. The people in the government go to court, and the court decides what the law means. Sometimes people hurt each other, do damage someone else's property, or break their agreements. The people go to court, and the court decides who was right and who was wrong. The court also decides whether someone has to pay money for the injury or damage they have caused. And sometimes the government believes that someone has not obeyed the law. The government brings the person to court. The court then decides whether or not that person has broken the law. If the court finds that the person is guilty, the court decides how to punish the person. So boom, there go a little courtness, and there go another little court, little image right there. Judges. The people who are in charge of the courts are called judges. Sometimes judges decide by themselves who is right and who is wrong, but sometimes a group of citizens of the United States help the courts make the decisions. These groups of people are called juries. Judges of the U.S. courts are not elected, although judges of many state courts are. The president picks men and women to become the judges of the U.S. courts. Usually people who are selected to be judges have a special training. They usually spend many years studying and working with the laws of the United States. The Senate must agree to the president's pick before a person can become a U.S. judge. Sometimes people do not like the decision of a U.S. judge called a district judge. When this happens, they can go to a second court of U.S. judges. The second court, called a court of appeals, decides whether a first judge made the right decision. Sometimes people can even ask a third court to decide if the first two courts made the right decision. This last court is called the Supreme Court of the United States. The Supreme Court is in Washington, D.C. It is right across the street from the U.S. Capitol, where Congress works. So boom, there we go. You know what I'm saying? Supreme Court up top, appeals in the middle, and district court where you start. All right, now you know. You have learned many things about how the U.S. government works. You have learned that the U.S. Constitution says how the government should work, and the Constitution says there are 3 branches of government. They are the legislative branch, called the Congress, which makes laws, the executive branch, led by the president. This branch makes sure that the government and people who follow the laws that Congress makes. The president leads the soldiers, sailors, and flyers. The president also works with leaders of other countries to protect our country and its people. The 3rd branch, which is made up of courts. The courts decide what the laws mean. They also settle arguments between people, and they decide whether or not people have obeyed the laws and how to punish people who have not. You have learned that citizens choose the members of Congress and the presidents by voting. The president chooses the judges, so the government has money to do its jobs. You have also learned that many people work for the government. You now know that Washington, D.C. is the U.S. capital. This is where the leaders of the government and many of the people who work for it are. So a couple of kids thinking about Congress, taxes and stuff. What else? Constitution, the executive branch, and the courts. You know what I'm saying? Little something. All right, your job. There is one very important reason why the U.S. government works. It is the people of the United States. They do many important jobs to keep the government working. The people vote to choose the leaders of the United States. The people pay taxes to pay for the work the government does. The people serve in the Army, Navy, and Air Force to help protect the country. The people help their leaders. The people tell their leaders what kind of laws they want. They also tell them what kind of things the government can do to help the people. People do this by writing letters to their leaders. People also have meetings and gather together in large groups to tell their leaders what they want. All of the people of the United States help the government do its job. A government in which the people election, executive branch, government, judges, judicial branch, laws, executive branch, military, president, Supreme Court of the United States, taxes, U.S. Capitol, and U.S. Constitution, Court of Appeals, U.S. District Court, U.S. House of Representatives, U.S. Senate, Washington, D.C., the White House, Oh, and then just the index. All right, but boom, and then there's the back. Boom, you know what I'm saying? Something simple, man, about this book, real cheap. You know what I'm saying? Just how the U.S. government works. Something simple and cool. Shoot, if you didn't learn nothing, hopefully you did. Or didn't learn nothing today, hopefully this video helped you out, you know, for everything. Peace.